To tell us where we stand in this weeks-old drama on the Korean Peninsula, we spoke earlier with Robert Colucci. Back 19 years ago, Dr. Gallucci was lead negotiator with North Korea during the Clinton administration, a time when the U.S. and North Korea almost reached a deal on nukes. Very broadly, it involved a trade, improved relations with the U.S., some aid, and the promise to build 2 nuclear reactors to generate electricity. In return, North Korea would freeze its nuclear program. First, we asked Gallucci whether the so-called agreed framework deal was a huge opportunity missed, and were the North Koreans principally responsible.
The agreement held the prospect of ending North Korea's nuclear weapons program permanently and committing them to a long-term energy cooperation agreement with certainly South Korea, but the rest of us, Japan and the United States as well. That would be from a perspective of committing them to something they would value and therefore discourage them from, let's say, the kind of activity they've been engaging in the last month or so. I think it was a real loss that the agreement was not ultimately fully implemented. Second point is, were the North Koreans responsible for this? I would say materially, yes. And the North Koreans, I think, were well aware that there were things that were implicitly or explicitly excluded from the agreement, and pursuing a secret uranium enrichment program with the assistance of the Pakistanis would have been excluded. And so that they did this, and we know they did this in the late 90s at least, and maybe before that, was inconsistent with the purpose of the agreement. Were they disappointed in the political implications of the agreement in terms of how it was implemented? Did they hope for more in terms of a relationship with the United States? Yes. Were we responsible for not giving more? I think certainly yes, because this deal was done in '94, recollect, and right after the deal was cut in '94 in the fall, there were congressional elections in the United States. The Republicans took control of both houses, and they did not like this deal. And they, I think, made it someplace between difficult and impossible for the Clinton administration to follow through and deliver the kind of political relationship that the North Koreans were expecting.
Was the breakdown of the framework agreement the moment when the North committed itself wholeheartedly to getting nuclear weapons?
Well, first of all, the North Koreans first decided that at least by the mid-1980s. So they launched a very serious nuclear weapons program in the 80s and into the early 90s. The agreed framework cut it short. They did, in fact, do what we could monitor that they were committed to doing. They mothballed programs. The reactor, the reprocessing facility, and the other 2 reactors they were building, work stopped on that. So we got that. They recommitted themselves to a nuclear weapons program after we sent our representative to Pyongyang, and this would be Jim Kelly, the Assistant Secretary of State for East Asia and Pacific Affairs. He told them that we knew they had a secret uranium enrichment program in violation of the agreed framework, and they, by their lights, denied it, by our lights, admitted it. And subsequent to that, within months, we cut off cooperation, they cut off cooperation, and they were off to the races on a nuclear weapons program, not to fall back from that until 2005, when they again declared themselves prepared to give up their program, until 2007, when they again committed themselves to a weapons program.
This event happened just before President Bush declared North Korea a member of the Axis of Evil. Did that scare the North Koreans?
Well, this early period of the Bush administration, there was a lot going on that would give the North Koreans pause for them to worry about. Yes, it was undiplomatic, but that's okay, actually. Diplomats often do things that other people regard as undiplomatic as a method of making a point. So that's not so bad. But I think there was a concern that the United States would be pursuing its vision of peace and security in Northeast Asia later after it finished pursuing its vision in the Middle East. So I think there was a concern about the direction of U.S. policy, yes.
10 years after the Axis of Evil speech and 20 years after the framework fell apart, what's wrong with acknowledging the fact that the North is a nuclear state and start negotiating from there?
There's every reason for the United States not to engage in discussions with North Korea, protracted discussions, that would legitimize their nuclear weapons program. A nuclear weapons program in North Korea means that we're accepting the accumulation of plutonium, highly enriched uranium, weapons, missiles, which would ultimately be provocative in Seoul and in Tokyo, dangerous to us, possible transfer of this equipment and material to other countries. Look what happened in 2007 with the transfer to Syria. So there's every reason for the United States not to allow the North Koreans to hold on to this, and there's every reason to expect that, notwithstanding their most recent commitment to their program, they'd give it up in another negotiation.
So where do we go from here?
I've always favored solutions to problems where people don't die. And so I would prefer that the threat that North Korea poses of provoking a conflict on the peninsula, of provoking the disintegration of the Non-Proliferation Treaty in Northeast Asia, of leading to the transfer of material, all the things that can go wrong here. I've always favored a solution that did not involve the use of military force. I would favor one that would have us once again go back to a negotiating table, but only if the nuclear weapons program was on the table for negotiation. Otherwise, as I said before, I think a negotiation will legitimize that program. If it were on the table, I think we are now well aware of the kind of verification procedures we'd like to have if we're going to have any confidence in an agreement we make with North Korea, and I'd go after that agreement once again.
But up to now, hasn't U.S. policy been to say no talks until North Korea abandons the nuclear program? Are you suggesting something different?
I don't know exactly what the administration's position is. We have a new Secretary of State. We're in a second Obama administration. We have to check that and see exactly where they are. It's a lot to ask them to give up their program before we start discussions. It's something else if we went into another framework type arrangement, or if you look at 2005, in which they say they're prepared to give up their program, and then you phase out their program as you phase in the benefits that they want to have for security, economic health, etc. So I don't think as a precondition of discussions, it is plausible that you can require that you get the full outcome that you want.
That was Robert Colucci, former diplomat and lead negotiator with the North Koreans during the Clinton administration. He's currently president of the MacArthur Foundation in Chicago. For the purpose of full disclosure, the MacArthur Foundation is an underwriter of LinkAsia.
Now on U.S. airwaves, a global channel of uncompromising stories. World news, documentaries, entertainment, and culture. Link TV, connecting you to the world. For more information, visit linktv.org.